webinar on the use of the Interim Global Data Model Navigator. The Interim Global Data Model Navigator is a tool which has been created for use by anyone who is involved in the global data model. It is a temporary tool because it will be replaced in June 2021 by the GS1 Web GDD. The main purpose is to allow the user to get a global view of the global data model. It links information from ADB, attribute definitions for business, to the list of attributes that were included in version 1.1 of the global data model. Attributes have been assigned to categories: food, near food, pet food, alcoholic beverages and tobacco, and in certain cases to subcategories like dairy, fresh fruits, grocery, cleaners, and so on. It also links these attributes to technical properties that have not been defined in the global data model, but rather in GDSN, the Global Data Synchronization Network, a technological implementation of the global data model. Further, attributes have been linked to validation rules currently being used in GDSN, as well as code lists and the code values associated with these. Finally, this tool also contains the GBC bricks that have been used to build the GDM categories and subcategories and a mapping between GDM and GBC. The tool is meant to search for information on attributes, categories, subcategories, regions, countries, validation rules, code lists, code values, and GBC bricks. It allows the users to compare GDM models and manage product profiles using all this combined information. It is important to note that as this is an interim tool, there will be no further development on it in terms of functionality. Microsoft Access is not an enterprise-grade solution, and we recognize that. But it may help you, the user, to bridge the gap between now and the time the GS1 Web GDD becomes available. Any requirements for new functionality will be passed on to the GS1 Global Office Web GDD team for inclusion in their list of functional requirements. Any bugs or errors you may find in this tool will be fixed, however. And finally, this tool will be updated every time there is an update to one of its data components, and this until the time that GS1 Web GDD becomes available. So the data components that we're talking about are ADB, Attribute Definition for Business, GDM, Global Data Model, GDSN, the Global Data Synchronization Network, and GPC, the Global Product Classification. Now the tool itself. We'll do a walkthrough of the most important functionality that you can find in the Interim Global Data Model Navigator. What you see here is the main menu, which is the switchboard giving access to the main functionality. Let's start by doing a quick search. By clicking on it, I come into a new form where I can quick search attributes, code lists, and values. Unfiltered, you can see that there are 198 attributes, 44 code lists, and 2,232 code values that have been assigned to the global data model, all of the categories and subcategories combined. At the top, there is a search box where you can enter your search criterion, and then by clicking on search, the results will be displayed at the bottom. At the bottom, there are 3 different tabs, one for attributes, one for code lists, and one for code values. Your search goes across all 3 of them. So any search criterion that you enter is immediately going to search against attributes, whether it's the BMS ID, which you can see in orange here, the GDM name of the attribute, which you can see in orange, but also the GDSN name of the attribute, so that's here in grey and italic, or any part of the definition, which you can see in blue here. For the code lists, it's going to search against the code list ID or the code list name. And for code values, it is going to search against code value, code name, or code definition. So just for the sake of the argument, we're going to enter package because it's got to do something with packaging. I click on search and I see that I have 35 attributes, 5 code lists, and 101 code values that comply with the search that I entered, namely package. The list of attributes is here, and you can see for the first one, it's not in the GDM name, it's not in the GDSN name, but the definition contains packaging. So here for this attribute, we get this as a result because the definition contains it. Here, it is the GDM name which contains the search term that I used, ingredient sequence on package. And here, it is the GDSN name, number of servings per package, but also the definition. When I look at the code lists, you'll see that there are 5 code lists that contain my search term. And when I look at the code values, you'll see that here it's the definition. And for the code values, it's mostly going to be the definition, which is going to be returned for your search term. Now, with this list of attributes, what I can do is I can go and look at the details for the attribute in question. So here, I click on any part of servings per product precision code, and a new form opens, which gives me the details for attribute servings per product precision code, which is BMS ID 1365. It gives me from GDM the business definition, the business example, and the usage statement. It gives me the GDSN technical properties, like the GDSN name, the data type, the length of the attribute, whether I can use multiple values for this attribute, yes or no, whether it's language enabled. Typically, that would only be descriptions, whether multi-language is allowed, whether it is unit of measure or currency enabled, and whether I can use multiple units of measure, and if associated with a code list, the name of the code list. Then the second part of the detail screen contains the category and layer applicability. Here you can see that for category food, it's being used in all, the attribute is being used in all the subcategories. At the layer level, only North America and Europe are using this. Australia and New Zealand is not checked, so they are not using this particular attribute at the regional layer. Whether the attribute is conditional or mandatory. Conditional meaning it is mandatory under certain circumstances. The key word for it being conditional in food is product, and the reason detail gives you the full explanation as to what conditions need to be met to make this attribute mandatory. In this case, if servings per product is used, this attribute is mandatory. So you can see that for all the categories that we currently have in the GDM, and you see that for alcoholic beverages, for example, it is local and it's optional. Note, at this point in time, anything which is local is optional. As soon as the member organizations of GS1 are providing the local layers, so the attributes they use locally only, these will be added to the global data model and will go through GSMP to be ratified, and then they will be added to this tool as well. The last part of the detail screen for the attributes contains the validation rules that apply to the attribute. In this case, there are none, but it says here, click rule to see detail, and yes, when you click on it, you get the detail screen for the validation rule. We'll come to that in a minute. Then applicable code values shows you the code values that are used in the code list for this specific attributes. So for product precision code, you see the whole list of code values here, with the code value, the code name, and the code definition. The first column here, GDSN, GDM, wherever it says GDSN, that means that the code value is a valid GDSN code value, but there is no reported use on that at the regional and local level. So from a GDM point of view, there is no reported use of this specific attribute code value. So you can see that all these in this list are only GDSN. If I click on a code value, I get the detail screen for the code value. Now this shows you the details of code value greater than or equal, which is in the code list measurement precision code with code list ID 158. The code name is greater than or equal, and the definition you can see here as well. Underneath, in case the code value is a GDM code value, meaning there is reported use on it, and that you can see here, if it says GDM instead of GDSN, you would get a most common use per GDM category. Is it being used, reportedly being used in food, near food, pet food, alcoholic beverages, and tobacco? And there you would see globally if the use of that particular code value is reported globally, regional, or local. Then for each of the global data model categories, you will see the declared geographical use in the global data model for the particular code value. So if it were regional North America, that means that at least 2/3 of the countries in North America are using this particular code value for a given, for the given category, in this case, food. You can always export the information that you have currently on your screen. In certain cases, there are Excel exports, but we'll show you in other screens where that is the case. On the other screens, the export is a PDF. You can give a file name to the PDF that you're exporting, and the location where you want to save it. Don't add the extension, because the system automatically adds the file extension to the name that you have chosen. You can also see that on all screens there is a help screen. When you click on it, here we get the help for this particular form. You can export that again to a PDF if you would like to do so. And it says you may have to scroll down to see all of the text. Clicking on OK brings you back to the screen. We close and return, we close and return, and we go back here. So that's the way we went for the attributes. Code lists, by clicking on a code list here, you get the code values and the attributes using the code list. Let's first look at the attributes using the code list I clicked on, which was GDSN_package type code. It's only packaging type code, and that is the GDSN, the global data model name, packaging type code which uses it. The GDSN name of this attribute is packaging type code in camel case and without the blanks. And we see that it is being used in all 5 GDM categories. We also get the list again of the code values belonging to this particular code list. And you get the code values in orange, the code name, the definition, and then again, whether there is any reported use on the code values. In this case here, you can see it says GDM everywhere, that the code values are being used reportedly in the global data model. Let's have a look. Clicking on any part of a code value brings me to the detail of code value ZU, the one I clicked on. ZU being flexible intermediate bulk container with a definition. Here it says GDM, and you can see the most common use for GDM category is, for all 5 of them, regional. Now, when we look at food, yes, Europe, and these are the countries that have reported the use of the code value ZU in their country. You can also see that Australia is also using the code ZU and has reported that use. New Zealand, on the other hand, doesn't, and in North America, ZU is not being used. So, and you can again run through this. You can export it, you can get your help, or you can close and return to the previous screen. Then we get to code values. Code values we've already talked about. It's the same principle. You get the list here of the code values that comply with the search criterion package that I've used. Any part can contain that term package that I used, and immediately you see the annotation whether it is a GDSN proper code value or whether there is any reported use in the global data model of the code value in question. For example, all the others were GDSN, but the code NE not packed has again a GDM usage reported. When I click on it, I go to the detail screen for NE, and you see again this is regional, and you can see that in this case in food it's for Australia, New Zealand and Europe at the regional level, and in North America only Canada has reported use of the code NE. That for the search. You can always remove the filters to go back to your initial state by clicking here, and when you click on export here, you get the a PDF with the list of attributes, code lists and code values that complied with your search. There's also the help functionality, and let's return to the main menu and go to the second part. Quick search of the validation rules. Here we are talking about the GDSM validation rules that apply to the global data model. The list of GDSM validation rules that were retained are the ones where all the attributes that are either impacted or a prerequisite for the rule are in the global data model, because there's no point in having a rule that you would have to follow where only part of the attributes are being used in the global data model. You see the BMS VR ID in orange here, and then the structured rule. When you click on the structured rule, you get the detail. So for rule 96, if trade item unit descriptor is equal to base unit or each, then child trade item GTIN must be empty. That is the GDSM rule. You also see the error message description, the GDSM target market scope, and don't be confused, this is the GDSM term global, which means all target markets as being used in GDSM. And in case provided by GDSM, we also give an example of data that will pass and example of data that will fail. The bottom part of the detail screen here gives you the attributes that are related to this validation rule. That's BMS ID 203, GTIN of the contained product, and BMS ID 66, packaging level code. And as you can see, those are the global data model names, so the ADV names of the attributes in question. Again, you can export this, you can look at the help, you can close the screen, and then we go back to the search. Again, you can type in a search. For search throughout the interim global data model navigator, always the same principle applies. You do not have to give the exact full term, but any part of the the term is sufficient. So if gross weight is what you're looking for, but you just type in gross, it will find gross weight, but it also will find gross on its own with a blank. The shorter your search term is, the more results you're going to get, but the less accurate your result is going to get. Case in point, if you type in BE, well, you will get a lot of hits on that search term, but it may not be exactly what you want. So the more precise you get in your search term, the more precise your results will be. When you type in numbers, you do not have to, for example, type in the full BMS validation rule ID here. Any part of the validation rule ID is enough. So here it's 3 positions that are shown, but if you type in 12, it will find 120, 312, but also 1205. The same goes with the BMS IDs. The system is built that when you enter a numeric term only, it's going to look only for BMS validation rule IDs, the BMS IDs, or in case we're talking about the GPC bricks, the GPC brick. So if it's numeric only, it is not going to look in any definitions that might be available. We've tried to be as consistent as possible. So here again, remove filters if you want to go back to the full list. You can see that without filters applied, we've got 128 validation rules that apply to the global data model overall, all categories. Let's go back to the main menu. GDM model by category is the thing that comes closest to the Excel spreadsheet with the global data model standard. When we click on this one, you can see global data model by category. Here, I've got a drop-down list, which is pre-populated. Pick a GDM category from the drop-down list. Let's take food. I'll take a subcategory because there are 6 subcategories. So let's take grocery. Show me the model. And this is the same as if you had taken the Excel spreadsheet of the global data model and applied the filters. Global data model only attributes, so included in GDM, yes. Food, yes. And grocery, yes. The buttons here at the top, whenever a button is pushed in, it means that the selection is made and included. So from this, I can deduce that I've got all global, regional, and local attributes for food, grocery, all the mandatory, conditional, and optional ones, and all the regions, North America, Australia, New Zealand, and EU. By playing with these, if you're only interested, for example, in the EU, I unselect North America, I unselect Australia, New Zealand, and you can see that I've got 125 in total. If you want to know how many are mandatory, well, let's remove conditional and optional. And you can see that there are 21 attributes that are mandatory for use in the EU. The fields at the bottom here, so you get BMS ID, the attribute name as in the global data model, and the ADB name, the definition, but that's the ADB definition, the layer in which the attribute is, in this case global, because that's where my mandatory attribute is. MCO means mandatory, conditional, optional, in this case mandatory. If it were conditional, I would find the keyword and the detailed reason. And then the geographical applicability in the global data model for this particular attribute is applicable in North America, Australia, New Zealand, and the EU. Important to remember, I selected only EU, and yet it says here North America and Australia, New Zealand. That is because the attribute does not only apply to the EU, but also to North America and Australia, New Zealand. I can export this to Excel, and by clicking on it, the system is going to ask me for a file name and for a file location. So when you enter that, it's going to export your current selection to an Excel file. So it's not the full global data model that is exported every time. It is what you currently have selected. So in my case here, it's only the mandatory attributes, global, regional, and local, but only within EU. Please note that local attributes, as I said before, are not yet in the global data model. Once GS1 member organizations provide their local layers, we will be adding those to the global data model through GSMP, and then consequently also in the database here. There is help, and you can go back to the main menu. Before we go back to the main menu, switching between categories and subcategories is easy. Your choices are only made once I click on Show Model. So if I want to change to pet food now, which has no subcategory by the way, so this is grayed out now, I click on Show Model, and it's going to show me everything selected again. So anything you previously selected for the previous model is gone away. So it's selecting everything again for pet food, and you see that in total there are 170 attributes that belong to the pet food model in the global data model. There's also the indication here showing what is shown on your screen. So when you change, and I type in, I make it near food here and cleaners or disposables, and I haven't clicked on Show Model yet, what I see below is still pet food. So this is where you can see what is displayed. Let's go back to the main menu. The next one is a big one and a bit a complex one. This Explore Attributes is where you can start using profiles. There are category and region of sale that are required to populate. So I'll say food. I need a subcategory for that, grocery. A region of sale, for example, Europe. And let's take Turkey. Show me the attributes. I click on Show Attributes, and here I see the total number of attributes for the selection I made, food, grocery, within Europe, country Turkey, is 149 attributes, of which 21 are mandatory and conditional optional included, 128 of 128. It's important to make that distinction. The mandatory attributes are by default included because they are mandatory. So that's the bottom part of the screen. This is the list of the attributes that are mandatory. Again, the same principle as always applies. When you click on an attribute, we open the detail form for the attribute and you get all the detail. In this case, for example, you see that the structured rule, when you click on it, you see the detail for the rule, and it's the same as the screen we showed before. Now let's go back to the conditional and optional attributes. There is a button here, a checkbox, which says include. Now, you can decide that if the condition is not met, so for example, if you were to use Excel rather than GDSN, you would not have to include authorized receiver of product information GLN. So I do not include it, I uncheck it. If I only use the GTIN and no other identifier for my product, I can exclude additional product identification and also additional product identification type code, which goes together with additional product identification. And that way I can select, for example, I don't want the manufacturing GLN, and I exclude it. This way you can build a profile for your product containing only the exact attributes that you need. You see that we've gone down from 128 to 124, so we only have 145 attributes anymore. I can save this, and I can say, for example, that we are talking, because we're talking grocery, it's chocolate and it's brand X, 200 grams, and it's for Turkey. And that's the name I give to my profile. The system tells you that it has been saved successfully. You see here that this is the name of the profile. Once it's saved, it shows you what exactly the attributes are that have been assigned to this profile. Afterwards, you can load that profile, you could export that profile to Excel, and then you can share that information with trading partners where you get an exact profile. If you're an MO, you could do the same with your model. If there are attributes that do not apply to your country, then you just exclude them. If you come back and next time, you could come in and say, well, load my profile. You can see that I've got two samples here. When I click on it, for example, on dairy turkey with brick, I click on it, and you can see that the profile has changed to dairy turkey with brick. We're talking about GBC brick 190, cream, shelf stable, and you can see the attributes that were included and excluded. So here, for example, battery size type code, battery weight, number of batteries built in, number of batteries required have been excluded from use in this particular profile. As I said, you can export, always the same principle. You provide a file name and you provide a file location, and it's going to give you everything around your profile. So it's going to give you the list of attributes, mandatory and conditional and optional, that you've selected, but also the validation rules, the code lists, and the code values that apply to it. You will also get one file which tells you these are the criteria that I've used for my particular file. The management of the profiles can be done through save profile, load profile, delete profile. If you want to delete, for example, dairy turkey with brick, yes, and the profile was deleted. And if you want to start from scratch, you can click on reset form and your form is blank again. If you don't know the product category or subcategory in GDM, you could also use GBC brick to find the subcategory. So when you click here, you'll see that so far 1,003 bricks have been assigned to all the current GDM categories and subcategories. The list below shows you the category or subcategory. In case it's a subcategory, you see the subcategory here. In case of pet food, alcoholic beverages and tobacco, you will only see the category name, then the GBC brick and the GBC brick description. If I click on one, I have selected it, and automatically for brick cream, shelf stable, GBC brick 190, food, dairy, refrigerated, frozen has been assigned to it, which makes it easier for you to know which exact category and subcategory it is. When I go back here, I could also say, well, I'll search on yogurt, and you'll see that there are 7 GBC bricks that contain yogurt in the GBC brick description. Again, I don't have to give yogurt frozen completely. No, yogurt in itself is enough to find it. I can reset my search, and I can also say, well, are there any bricks containing 115? Oh yeah, there's two. 6115 for black radishes and 115 coffee instant. And you can see that both of them have been assigned to different subcategories within food. The system shows you how many bricks comply with the search term that you've used. So I can reset my search again to get the full list. And then I can use the help screen here or return to the menu here. We'll go back to the main menu. So far we've done a quick search on attributes, code lists and code values. We've done a quick search on the validation rules. We've looked at assigning and creating profiles to products or to product groupings to your liking, where you exclude any attributes that you don't want to be part of the particular profile. We've looked at the GDM model by category, which is the full GDM model as in the Excel sheet. Now we can go for two additional functions, the GDM attribute usage comparison and the GDM saved profile comparison. First, let's look at the attribute usage comparison. When I click on this, I'm going to compare two models with each other. I could say, well, let's take alcohol and North America, United States, and I want to compare that with alcohol, excuse me, Europe and Belgium. There we go. And the result of this comparison is that there are 20 differences. There are 20 attributes that are different between the two. So as you can see, alcohol for United States has attributes 370 and 373, whereas Belgium does not have those two. But in Belgium, they're using tax type code, tax category code, genetically modified declaration code, additional legal product information and nutrient bases, which are not being used in the United States. So this comparison screen shows you the difference between two models or two subparts of models. You could do a comparison between United States and Canada, for example, as well. The export that you do is going to be exported to Excel and is the exact list of attributes that you see on your screen here. Comparison is GDM saved profile comparison. So once you've got two GDM saved profiles, you can start comparing your profiles and see where there is a difference between the two. As long as you don't have two saved profiles, this button is grayed out because you can't do a comparison with only one or zero profiles. So if you haven't got any profiles or you don't have two or more saved profiles, this button is unavailable to you. When we click on it, you'll see that in this screen, there's profile 1 and profile 2. I happen to have two profiles ready, so I'm going to take my chocolate brand X 200 grams turkey and I'll compare it with dairy US with brick. Not that it makes sense to start comparing chocolate with dairy, but there you go. Here, you'll see in the bottom part that the details of the saved profile are already there. So I didn't use a brick for this. I just say food, grocery, Europe, Turkey. And my second profile has a brick, and we're talking about ice cream, ice novelties frozen for the United States, in the region North America, dairy refrigerated frozen in the category food, and the brick is 250. When I click on compare, same principle as we just had for the model comparison, I get a comparison between the two, and you see that there are 56 attributes that are different between the two. The result you see is only the difference. Whatever is equal is not shown. So it is really about what is different between the two. So you can see that in profile 1, I've got the first 6 attributes that are not present, but they are in the second one. And then a whole slew of attributes that are used in profile 1, but not in profile 2, and so on. So all 56 of them, and you can see that list here. This is the full list. And again, you can export your comparison. You can give the file a name, and it will be saved as an Excel file. You can give it a location, and your file will be saved in the correct location. Please remember, don't add the extension for the file, because that will be done automatically. So we're talking about an Excel export here. You can click on Help, or you can go back to the main menu. We talked already at the beginning about the GBC brick mapping. So all the global data model categories have been assigned GBC bricks. 1003 divided between different product categories and subcategories. When I click here, you'll see that we're talking about the same list as we used in the Profile Explore attributes when we looked at the GBC bricks. But here I can search for either a specific brick and see where it has been assigned, or I can see what are all the bricks that have been assigned to a category or a subcategory. By default, 1003 bricks for all GDM categories. That's because this checkbox is checked. If I uncheck it, I can pick a category, for example, tobacco. There are no subcategories. I say set filter, and I see the GBC bricks and GBC brick descriptions that have been assigned to the global data model category tobacco. When I click on one brick, I get a detail screen where I also see the GBC segment, the GBC family, and the GBC class, together with the GBC brick in orange and the GDM category it has been assigned to. You could also do, I'll reset the form, let's stay healthy, and let's go again for yogurt, and you'll see that typing in yogurt is going to result in 7 bricks, which are all in the same subcategory, dairy, refrigerated and frozen, which is part of the food GDM category. Clicking on export is going to create you an Excel file containing the results for your search. So this is a result for yogurt. These are the 7 bricks and the subcategory they belong to. You provide a file name and a file location, and the system will save the file for you. There is help if you would like it, and you could reset the form to go back to the full list of bricks. Let's go back to the main menu. Then there are a couple of additional, not really functionality, but more explanation about is going to tell you what the interim global data model navigator actually is. And we do hope you enjoyed the use of the interim global data model navigator. As you can see, export is available here as well. A disclaimer on the use of the global data model interim navigator. Version information. This is important because of the updates. As I said in the beginning, the Interim Global Data Model Navigator is using parts from all over the place. So we are using version 1.0 of this particular Interim Navigator, and ADB is version 1.3, GDM is version 1.1, the information sourced from GDSN is 3.1.13, and the GBC bricks in there are still from December 2019. It also tells you about the local layers that are currently not available. They will be shown as standard or pending GSMP approval once GS1 MOs submit this information. There are links here that will bring you to the exact location of the standard that we have been using to incorporate in this database. And whenever there is a change to one of the components, you can click on the summary delta to give you a PDF with the summary of the changes that impact the global data model. Summary delta of the global data model is going to give you the summary compared to version, in this case, version 1.0, because we're on 1.1. But there is also the detail, which is going to give you the detailed impact on all the categories, GDM categories and subcategories. For GDSN, the same thing. Originally, we had 3.1.11 in the version before 1.0. Now we're on 3.1.13. So what is the impact of GDSN 3.1.13 on the global data model 1.1? You can see that in delta, in summary, or you can see the detail delta, which is going to give you full detail for every code value, every code list, every attribute, and the impact on the distinct GDM categories and subcategories. Once there is an update on the GBC bricks, there will be a button here as well for a delta summary or a detail, as you want. You can also export the content off this screen, not the deltas, but just what information is being used at this point in time, and you can export that to PDF. Then help is going to give you the help for the main menu. And then we get to the last part, which is more technical. That's also why that menu option is called maintenance. When we click on maintenance, we get the maintenance menu. In here, you can find an error log. In that error log, supposing that the system throws an error and you want to notify us of that particular error, you can export the error log to Excel, and then you can attach that Excel to your email, because that will give us the information we need to fix the bug. Export profiles is here as well. So in Explore Attributes option, you can save profiles. Now, once we upgrade the Interim Navigator, you will receive a new database. That means that you will have to export your existing saved profiles, and you will have to import your profiles into the new database. So that also means that whenever there's an update to the Interim Navigator, you get a full new database, and there are no updates to be run on code, on tables and so on. That's all very messy. You get a full new set, and that is also the reason why, if you want to retain the profiles that you have saved, you can export them to Excel and then re-import them in your new version of the database, which will then contain any new data that we've put in it because of updates to the ADB standard or the GDM standard, GBC standard or GDSN standard, and it will also contain whatever you saved as profile. Unhide navigation pane, and hide navigation pane is only for advanced users, so I'd advise you not to use it unless there is a dire emergency. And with that, we have completed our tour of the interim global data model navigator. We hope you enjoy the use, and if there are any questions or support, you can always contact us. Thank you and enjoy the tool.